Sir.
Yes, I can.
Good afternoon, one and all. I am Dr. Asavri Sawant, and on behalf of Voice of Healthcare, I welcome you all to the World Immunization Week panel discussion on the topic Vaccination Against Food and Waterborne Diseases in Early Schoolgoers, organized by Voice of Healthcare and powered by DrReddy's Labs. For discussing the significance of food and waterborne diseases in early schoolgoers, we have some very eminent experts here with us today. As it is World Immunization Week, this panel discussion is focused on creating awareness amongst early schoolgoers and their parents against diseases of food and waterborne. So please allow me to welcome Dr. Santosh Gupta, Surveillance Medical Officer at World Health Organization. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Gunjan Taneja, who is the Program Officer of Vaccine Delivery at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Welcome, sir. I welcome Dr. Menak Chatterjee, who is the Immunization Specialist at UNICEF India Country Office. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I welcome Dr. Shubhangi Pandagre, who is the Regional Immunization Consultant of MP at UNICEF. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
I welcome Dr. Nitin K. Shah, who is the Section Coordinator of Pediatrics at PD Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everybody.
I welcome Dr. Manu Chaudhary, who is the Consultant of Infectious Diseases and Pediatrics at Rainbow Children's Hospital, Bangalore. Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning. Yes, hi.
Dr. Manu Chaudhary would also be leading this session from here on. So over to you, ma'am.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So excited to have this session with all of you from various backgrounds. I'll dive in to the questions, and we'll start with Dr. Santosh Gupta. What is the incidence and prevalence of food and waterborne diseases amongst early school goers in India? Please unmute yourself, Dr. Santosh.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon to the panelists and everyone who joined for this live session. Am I audible, everyone? Dr. Manu? Yes. Okay. So,
We
first
can
of
hear
all, actually, first of all, I actually congratulate to the team of White Healthcare because in this very crucial time, uh, today is the last day of World Immunization Week, and actually they have organized and that tried to place the eminent expert in one platform. So as we are facing unprecedented time, especially if we talk about our children. Since 2 to 3 years, our schools are actually closed, are partially open. So the concern of every parents, is it safe? Are our the level of immunity of our children is up to the mark if they go out and attend the schools? And basically, if we talk about the vaccine and waterborne diseases and foodborne diseases, because if I make to understand everyone, As per the recent CBHI, Central Bureau of Health Intelligence, about 120 cases per 1,000 children under 5 में अगर हम बात करें, they actually suffer annually for the waterborne and foodborne diseases. Uh, Under 5 mortality, actually you have that segregated, it's 2 to 6 year, but in health basically we categorize under 5 the morbidity and mortality. So in incidence of diarrhea, enteric fevers, cholera, typhoid fever, and major waterborne and foodborne disease, they are the major cause of the under 5 mortality. अगर हम सीधे सीधे शब्दों में कहें अपने आम लोगों के लिए, उन पेरेंट्स के लिए जिनका कंसर्न होता है कि हम अपने बच्चों को कैसे वैक्सीनेट करें, कौन सी ऐसी बीमारी हैं जो हमारे 2 से 6 साल तक के बच्चों के लिए ज़्यादा होती हैं और उनका क्या प्रिविलेंस है, इंसिडेंस है। तो अगर हम बात करें तो सबसे ज़्यादा मॉर्बिडिटी और मोर्टलिटी होती है दैट एक्यूट डायरियल डिसीज़ की। अंडर 5 मोर्टलिटी की अगर हम बात करें तो पर 1000 लाइव बर्थ में अभी 36 है हमारे इंडिया का। सबसे अच्छी बात ये है कि हमारा जो इम्यूनाइजेशन प्रोग्राम है और उस इम्यूनाइजेशन प्रोग्राम का जो हमारा टारगेट है इंडिया का, वो लगभग 2 करोड़ के वैक्सीनेट करते हैं। तो अगर हम बात करें कि नंबर्स में, तो लगभग 4 लाख से 5 लाख के आसपास चिल्ड्रन जो 5 साल की उम्र के नीचे होते हैं, दे डाई ईच ईयर इन डायरिया एंड फूडबॉर्न डिसीजेस। एंड बेसिकली अगर हम ग्लोबली देखें, ये तो हमारा डेटा रहा एक ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव पे। अगर हम इंडिया की अगर हम बात करें तो इसमें भी हमारे पास में 5 से 6 लाख बच्चे एक्यूट डायरियल डिसीज से उनकी डेथ होती है। Acute diarrheal disease is one of the that foodborne that waterborne diseases. There are many other diseases. They also contribute significantly. Globally 1.7 बिलियन केसेस जो होते हैं चाइल्डहुड पे, वो आते हैं एवरी ईयर पे। तो हम लोगों का कंसर्न ये रहता है कि कैसे हम एविडेंस बेस्ड पॉलिसीज़ को सिंथेसिस करें और उस एविडेंस बेस्ड पॉलिसीज़ को सही तरीके से इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा सके। सो आई थिंक आवर पैनलिस्ट विल आल्सो दैट फोकस ऑन these things. So this is the data that making us aware and making us sensitized towards the waterborne and foodborne disease. Thank you. That's from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. Let us know the problem with food and waterborne diseases in India and across the world. My next question is for Dr. Nitin Shah. Can you hear me, sir? Okay. Can I put forward the question, Dr. Nitin? The question for Dr. Nitin Shah is, what are the biggest risk factor when it comes to food and waterborne diseases? What preventative measures should parents adopt to avoid their children contracting such infections? Do you hear me, Dr. Nitin?
Hello, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. So I just put forward the question to you. What are the biggest
Yes.
risk factors when it comes to food and borne diseases, and what are the preventative measures parents can take? Because nowadays we are
Right.
seeing in our OPD hospital so many of these kids coming with all these diarrheal diseases.
Right. So, as we are discussing food and waterborne diseases, it means that you get a disease either with a contaminated food or a contaminated water. So, of course, the risk factor would be directly that you eat or drink something which is contaminated. But that's the immediate cause. The reason behind why would you have a contaminated food or a contaminated water would be at the various levels. So, right from the person who makes the food, his hygiene may be at suspect. Then the way he stores the food before he serves to you, that may be at suspect. Then the utensils that I use, and then at home when you are eating or drinking food, It depends on whether you are keeping all the hygienic measures. So, like if you have kept food which is open for some time, the flies can sit or some other organisms can get encroached, or you may keep the food overnight, which may become stale and not good. The water, especially, of course, in major cities, the water source may not be as bad, but in the rural part, the water may be heavily contaminated with a lot of organisms, which can lead to diarrhea, dysentery, cholera, typhoid, and so many other food and waterborne diseases. So it is always prudent that you have to take measures to prevent this type of contamination. And lastly, the person who is eating or drinking, I think his personal hygiene. So hand hygiene, then hygiene before and after using toilet. For children, washing their hands before they touch their food items, or after they come back from their school or from the place where they've gone to play, etc. So these are simple things. So I think the way you can prevent majorly food and waterborne diseases would be, one, to, as far as the water is concerned, either boil the water or at least use a filtered water, or if possible bottled water, depending upon where you are and how you are. The second thing would be, for, as far as the food is concerned, always use fresh food. The vegetables especially have to be washed thoroughly before you cook them and before you use them, especially if you're eating uncooked salads. Then if you haven't washed your vegetables well, then a lot of food in contamination could be there before the food has entered your house. And then, as I said, hand hygiene, which is the most important, both for the parents and for the children, that they have good hand hygiene habits so that they don't end up into having a contaminated food or water being drunk. So I think these are the simple things, use of soap and water,
Absolutely.
cleaning your hands before and use of toilet, and before you touch your food is a long way to go to prevent food and waterborne diseases. Of course, besides this, there are vaccines, which I'm sure we will discuss. If you cannot prevent all these, then of course vaccinations are there to prevent some of these food and waterborne diseases.
So rightly put, Dr. Nitin Shah. I think hand washing is so underestimated, but such an important preventative measures which all of us can teach our kids and follow ourselves and our house helps who are coming and preparing those meals and serving those meals for us. Coming to our next question, this is for you, Dr. Gunjan Taneja. What would be your advice for parents regarding if the child contracts any food or waterborne diseases? What should the parents do for their children?
Okay. So first of all, before Dr. Sorry. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Sadri. So first of all, I think would like to thank the Voice of Healthcare team and Dr. Reddy's labs for organizing this event and for providing all of us the opportunity to speak on this very important topic. So just taking forward the points which uh, Dr. Santosh and then Dr. Shah made, I think uh, all major food and waterborne illnesses. So they produce a set of overlapping symptoms, and we know these might range from diarrhea, dysentery, vomiting, dehydration, fever, and so primarily the treatment remains symptomatic for all these: fluid replenishment, probiotics, if needed, antibiotics. In refractory cases, we do tests to isolate the organism and then do targeted treatment. So the general advice for parents is to closely monitor the child and reach out to the child's pediatrician or the family physician, whosoever has been supporting the family in the case of the child. My only point here would be, as Dr. Santosh alluded to, that the onset of food and waterborne illnesses are often sudden and acute. So early intervention is what is beneficial to minimize adverse impact. So I think uh, it's common. It occurs multiple times. There are multiple episodes in an year which the child might have. So no need of panic, but just be I think, vigilant, monitor the child for symptoms, consult your doctor, and if the symptoms, let's say, persist or worsen in spite of taking treatment, then we move on to the next step uh, as needed or as suggested by the protocols. So nothing very specific, but I think be vigilant and keep open your eyes and ears to see how the child is doing. Thank you.
So rightly put. So most of them are conservatively managed. If the kids are coming to our OPD, exactly that's what we say: maintain their hydration, know what is dehydration. So we teach them at younger age group. If they're having less than one diaper in 6 hours and less than three diapers in 24 hours, that's what it means. The child is dehydrated. And then the warning signs: there's blood in the stool. They're vomiting a lot. So even oral hydration is not possible at home. Those are some warning signs where you have to get your child in the hospital. And sometimes we even, like, admit them and start them on cannula. So timely approaching your pediatrician or physician will be very, very important, and especially in very younger age group, because we are seeing even as young as less than 30 days coming in with dehydration during this season, where we are seeing all these heat wave across the country. So don't take it lightly. If your child is getting some of these infection, please seek medical help time. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Gunjan. We'll talk about the next question with Dr. Manik Chatterjee. Please discuss the recommended daily hygiene practices that parents should inculcate in children to prevent food and borne infections.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manu, for that question. And first of all, thank you to the Voice of Healthcare team and Dr. Reddy's lab for organizing this wonderful session and for the opportunity of speaking here. So I'll draw upon what previous speakers have said. Like they have identified that foodborne, waterborne illnesses, they lead to diarrheal diseases. So as I think all your viewers realize that the ultimate pathway through which all of this comes into the child is the fact that the child is either handling food or there is contamination of the water. So whatever is going into the child, whatever is being ingested, that is the route through which this is spreading. So there are various levels of preventive measures. You can have them at a community level, you can have them at the point of origin or the source of the water or the food that is happening, and there is also the component of personal protection and prevention. So coming to the personal sort of points which every family can look into, and the most important, which Dr. Nitin Shah had alluded to, is hand hygiene. And as we have very well realized over the last 2 years, this is one of the simplest and most effective personal hygiene options that we can inculcate in our child. अगर हाथ साफ हैं तो हाथ के द्वारा जो भी वो खाना खा रहे हैं या वाटर हैंडल कर रहे हैं, that probability of infection going into the child comes down. So, as per recommended, using soap and water frequently through the day, and just not naam ke vaste soap and water, but the recommended 20 seconds of wash, with the appropriate steps of using soap and water, that I would say is very important. और इसी पॉइंट पे जो दूसरा पॉइंट आता है, children learn from us. So rather than telling them to wash their hands with soap and water, I think we should be the ones to actually demonstrate and inculcate these habits into our lifestyles so that they can learn from us. Apart from that, there are a few other very simple measures, using footwear whenever you go out, because that is a potential source. Having good hygiene overall, डेली नहाना, साफ सुथरे कपड़े पहनना, हैंडलिंग ऑफ वाटर, नॉट टू टच द वाटर डायरेक्टली. जो फूड हैबिट्स हैं, जैसे डॉक्टर नितिन ने भी पहले बताया कि खाना अगर पका रहे हैं, सो वॉशिंग द वेजिटेबल्स और वॉशिंग द फूड मटेरियल प्रॉपरली बिफोर कुकिंग देम. not having raw food and cooked food, especially agar non-vegetarian hai, together, because that is another potential source of infection. So these are very basic things which we can actually do at our household level to ensure that our children remain more or less free from this particular malady. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Manik. Very well put, briefly, to explain what we can do at various standpoints. Now, coming to Dr. Shubhangi, my question is: what are the most common food and borne diseases that affect early school goers? And what are the most common disease causing agents? just in general to share with our public?
Yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, VOH and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and thank you so much for bringing all of us at the same platform and give us the opportunity talking to the public and to the community directly during the World Immunization Week. So, as Dr. Manu has asked me, so there are few diseases, diarrhea, dysentery, typhoid. Typhoid, I think, is the most common thing nowadays in many parts of India. It's not just restricted to a particular demography or geographical area. And jaundice, hepatitis A, even the rotavirus also. These diseases are caused by different organisms, like bacteria. If we talk about the bacteria, there are E. coli. Shigella is also there, and the Salmonella typhi. If you talk about the viruses, there is rotavirus and hepatitis A. Hepatitis A virus is specifically contributing the hepatitis A disease, and even apart from this bacteria and viruses, malaria is also there. Though it's not directly happening by drinking the contaminated water, but mosquitoes they grow up in the contaminated water, and only eventually it leads to the malaria. And apart from the organisms, other things like toxins, the food toxins and pesticides are also contributing for the food and waterborne diseases in the India. These pesticides, as if we see the cabbage and other vegetables nowadays growing up, nowadays we are focusing on the organic culture also, but yeah, we are suffering from the pesticides diseases also. And sometimes the heavy metals like mercury and all, it's also contributing for the water and foodborne diseases in India. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shubhangi. Very well put. And from clinical practice, and I'm sure Dr. Nitin Shah will also echo with me, mostly what we see is viral diseases, okay? And they don't need antibiotics. So I really encourage parents not to go to the pharmacy and just buy those over-the-counter mix antibiotics of ofloxacin with metronidazole and onidazole. So mostly it's viral and it gets better on its own. It's usually when they are having fevers longer than 3 days, there's blood in stool, that we are suspecting something which might need antibiotics or anti-parasitic medication. So just don't jump on getting your child with starting with medications. Just supportive care again will be more important. Okay, so we're gonna move to our next set of questions. My first question is to Dr. Gunjan Taneja. Please discuss the immunization dosage schedule prescribed for children in India at different ages related to food and waterborne diseases. Please talk about the vaccination record for children.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manu. And as we all know, prevention is better than cure. And as Dr. Nitin Shah has said, if not all, there are vaccines which are available both through the government funded universal or government owned, managed, funded, financed universal immunization program and additional vaccines through the private sector. So I'll just try in another 3 or 4 minutes, I'll just try to give a brief of where we are as part of both these mechanisms which currently operate in the country. So as we all know, and Dr. Santosh alluded to it, the universal immunization program in India, which provides for 12 vaccines free of cost to beneficiaries, reaches out to almost 2.9 crore and children, infants less than 2.7 crore and 2.9 crore pregnant women. Similarly, in the private sector, we have the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, which sort of prescribes a schedule and which is followed, which includes all the vaccines which are included as a part of the government schedule, plus some additional ones. Overall, if we look at the data currently as per the National Family Health Survey 5, which refers to data from 2019 to 2021, so around 95% of the vaccinations in India happen in the public sector, which ranges from around 87.7% in the urban areas to 97% in the rural geographies. The private sector contributes to the rest of it, primarily in the urban sector. And the contribution of the public sector, the reach of the public universal immunization program has in fact improved by 4 or 5 percentage points between NFHS 4 and NFHS 5. So now, so this is how the system operates. There are these two mechanisms through which vaccines are made available to the beneficiaries. So now the next question is, which are the food and waterborne vaccines which the government provides for? So as we all know, and the program started with it, we have the vaccines against polio virus. We have not had cases of polio in India for a very long time, but we do continue with both the routine vaccination and the national immunization day. So through the universal immunization program, we have the oral polio vaccine at 6, 10, and 14 weeks of birth, and then a booster between 18 to 24 months of life. Similarly, fractionated inactivated poliovirus vaccine is also now a part of the program, which we give as 2 doses at 6 and 14 weeks of age. Uh, and as Dr. Shubhangi was mentioning, rotavirus, it is possibly the most common cause of diarrhea. You also alluded to it that most of the diarrheal episodes are viral in nature. So the rotavirus vaccine is another vaccine which has recently been scaled up across the country, and again as a 3 dosing schedule at 6, 10, and 14 weeks. So these are the two primary vaccines which are available as part of the government program. Now, if we come to the private sector, apart from these vaccines, we have the typhoid conjugate vaccine, which is given at 6 to 9 months of age as a single dose, and the hepatitis A vaccine, if it is a live attenuated vaccine at 1 year of age, and if it is an inactivated vaccine, 2 doses, the second at 1.5 years of age. Similarly, fractionated IPV is again a part of the private sector. The difference is that in the private sector, it's administered at 6, 10, and 14 weeks, and not just 6 and 14 weeks. And there are two boosters also, one in the second year of life and then one later between 4 to 6 years of age. So these are the vaccines which we provide for through the government sector and the private sector. As far as the uh, records are concerned, for the beneficiaries of the universal immunization program, we have what is called as the Mother and Child Health Protection Card, the MCP card, which captures all the vaccinations which are provided to the children. And apart from that, it also captures other health parameters. So the antenatal care records for the mothers, the growth and nutritional status for the children. Similarly, all private hospitals do provide vaccination cards, which are also now mandated for admissions to schools and other facets of life. In addition, there have been efforts to digitize vaccination cards primarily in the private sector till date, but now taking in learnings from the COVID Vaccine Intelligence Network or the CoWIN platform, which we all know was the fulcrum for the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination program in the country, the government is now undertaking efforts to digitize, unitize, unify, universalize all immunization vaccination records uh, across the country through a system which would try to adapt the CoWIN system for routine immunization program in the country. I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gunjan, for sharing that information. Just briefly, I would like to talk about here about the vaccinations, these vaccination which are not available in the government sector, because parents sometimes feel because they are not important. They are the only thing that is important is what the government is giving. Rest of all, those vaccines are now put as optional vaccines. But I want to enforce and reinforce this fact that these are important vaccinations which your children should be getting at younger age groups so that they don't come across with all these infections. So for example, typhoid vaccine, it's not available in the government sector, but it's very important vaccination. And now we are just doing one shot, which is good for rest of their lives. The cost is around 17-1800 for it. And trust me, we've had patients, and Dr. Nitin Shah will also agree with me. We've had so many typhoid, getting admitted, getting IV antibiotics, staying in the hospital for so long, which is such a easily preventable disease in India. The second one is hepatitis A. There are two vaccines, 6 months apart, starting at 12 months of age. Again, very prevalent infection in younger children and can cause a lot of severe manifestations as well if not taken care of at right time. So just because they are not available in the government setting doesn't make them optional. They are very highly recommended, I would say. So please be aware of those vaccines, and if you can support them, please go ahead and get it done for your children. So I'll move to the next question. My next question is for Dr. Santosh Gupta. A fortified immunity is readiness for any calamity. Please give some tips for boosting child's immune system.
You are
You're
on mute,
muted.
Dr.
You're muted,
Santosh.
Dr. Santosh. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, is it audible?
Yes. Yes.
Hello. Yeah. So I think this section is important to make the aware of the parents how to boost the immunity. Before that, focusing on this, basically, I would like to say, and our previous that speakers also explained, we start from our breastfeeding. As this is focused on the 2 to 6 year school goer children, but one of the natural vaccine that vaccines works forever and last ever, and that's trusted for everyone. That is breastfeeding. So if exclusive breastfeeding up to the 6 month and followed by the complementary feeding, that has followed, that children and that kid have a better immunity as compared to the child who have not followed and who have not got the opportunity of the exclusive breastfeeding. So this breastfeeding is one of the most that important and the most publicly adopted things. If we come to the tips that immunity boosting our children, there are so many things that comes in mind when we talk about the boosting our child's immunity. First, the natural immunity already have, but if in case we would like to focus on these following things. First of all, breastfeeding at the recommended time period, that means the 6 months exclusive breastfeeding, again the that complementary feeding for the another 6 months, and up to the age of 2 years. Regular hand washing practices, as Manak Chatterjee already and Dr. Tuneja already that emphasized. We have a evidence and proven that record that hand washing is one of the best practices that is prevented the COVID vaccinations. And actually, from these platforms, I usually meet to the pediatricians. They say they have a words that. Since 2 years when we started the hand washing and that face mask wearing, all these reduce the morbidity among the children. Okay, so this has proved that the face mask, hand washing at the regular intervals and following the guideline on the hand washing, this is one of the major that interventions that can reduce the morbidity and mortality among the children. Basically, if we talk about the hand washing, as per the estimate from the WHO, 8% infections that is spread by the touch. So if we wash hand regularly through the alcohol based or the soap based, as per the that human K that formula, so we reduce the 8% infection that is spread through the touch. Another point, basically, Dr. Taneja already explained, and we all agreed, even including the parents. The National Immunization Schedule that comes under the UIP, basically, Government of India and IAP, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, they also have the same or somewhat partially agreed and different kind of the immunization schedule to the children, but it is very much advisable to the parent. Do not skip and do not get your child left out or drop out for the recommended immunization schedule. So if child is immunized as per age, all the antigens they got, they have a very little chance of the infection. And one more things I would like to emphasize, like the co-infection of other disease. If the child got vaccinated against the one particular disease, they also have a opportunity to do not get the other infections because they are the immune. Another point, apart from the immunization schedule, for children it is very important basically to sleep proper. That means the adequate recommended timing for sleep, adequate recommended timing for sleep as per the age, basically that is very important. Another point that encourage every parents to follow the healthy diet pattern to the children. Most of the time childs basically have a desire to for the fast food and all the things, but as a physicians and as a public health expert, we definitely strongly recommend the healthy diet, because diet that makes your body to fight against the diseases. So healthy diet is most important things. Apart from these, the boosting immunity, that means overall development, holistic development across the household, and where the child goes. That means outside, inside the house, and outside the house. If they follow the healthy practices, they definitely develop and boost their immunity. So this is the kind of practices we follow, and we advise every parents to follow the healthy diet pattern. Do not escape and do not avoid immunization schedule. Follow all the vaccination as per the government recommended, because we have a one of the most important, one of the most oldest that trusted immunization program that started from the 1978, that is EPI. And we have remarkable that journey of the immunization, and we have proved even for the COVID vaccinations, and expecting that we just started the lower age group, and we will be starting more lesser age group also for the COVID vaccinations. So ultimately and finally, we follow all the dietary pattern as per the recommendation. We follow the immunization schedule. Dr. Taneja, one point has very that beautifully explained about 85 to 95% vaccination coverage by the government of India. Okay, and we vaccinate the children, the large number of children, even the more than few countries of the total population. Okay, so we have that kind of the robust immunization system, the cold chain infrastructure system, and that has been proved. And recently during the COVID pandemic, most of the things that has been prevented and by the vaccines. So vaccine is one of the that we already said, and other speakers, prevention is better than cure. So we create the healthy lifestyle. We approach the holistic health, not for only for the curative health. Dr. Manu also you said that we should not jump only on the medication. We also take and we focus on the management of the cases. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. So my next question is for Dr. Nitin Shah. What are the early signs and symptoms of food and waterborne diseases?
So before I answer that question, I had some remarks for the previous two questions. The number one is that there are vaccines which are important, as you mentioned, which are not given in the public health, and usually the vaccines come in private market at least 10 to 20 years before it become part of public health. Just to give an example of rotavirus vaccine and pneumococcal vaccine, we have been using since 2005, and it has come in public health only since last few years. So I know when the patient, I mean, I would be happy if the public health acknowledges the need of other vaccines too, though they are not given in the public health, that they are required, because many times we see patients, parents come, and when we talk about, say, vaccine which are in private market but not in public health, they say they are not required, the doctors give it only for profit. I know some loose remarks are passed by paramedical staff, nurses, etc., which is not good for the community, because then it will prevent and affording patient from taking vaccine which are equally important, like hepatitis A and typhoid. I mean, I always give an example that you don't see polio, you don't see diphtheria, you still take the vaccines, right? And you must continue. But you are seeing typhoid, you are seeing jaundice every day in and day out. Why are you not taking those vaccines which are so good? So I think my humble plea to public health experts is that they should somehow mellow down this private versus public and see that these vaccines which are available in private market also are not discouraged, if not encouraged. So that is and second, just one quick comment is that there is nothing like an immunity booster. I mean, we have heard this umpteen number of time in COVID, except for breastfeeding, immunization, and correct diet, which has vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin A in plenty. There is really no need to take, and there is really no one such booster to really boost the immunity of the child. The child is healthy, child will be having good immunity. Now coming to the common presentation that you are talking about. So the common water food borne diseases which we see are, let's say, jaundice, what we call jaundice, what we call hepatitis. It starts with fever, loss of appetite, then child has some weight loss, stools become little pale in color, and then child may develop jaundice or the yellow eyes, and then he will also start passing yellow urine. And then after 2 weeks, the appetite will return. That will be his first sign of recovery. The jaundice may become deep, doesn't matter. After another 2 weeks, the jaundice will disappear and everything will be all right. And 99.9% of the children become okay even when they develop this hepatitis. The second common food and waterborne disease is diarrhea. Now, as you very rightly said yourself, that the diarrhea are usually viral. So, acute watery diarrhea, as we call, child starts with very high fever, vomiting, loose motion. Sometimes it may start only with pain in abdomen and vomiting, and next 1 or 2 days the diarrhea may come. If there's food poisoning, then they have eaten some contaminated food or have eaten some outside food which was not very healthy, and they may start symptom in the next 24 to 48 hours. So these are the same. In a very small baby, less than 1 year, viral diarrhea, which is called rotavirus, is so common. And there, in spite of the best efforts, 30 to 40% of children become dehydrated because they are not able to retain fluids. So they have to sometimes visit the hospital for some hydration measures. The third common foodborne is, of course, part of diarrhea is dysentery, what you call. So that's where visible blood. So there's a lot of blood, mucus, white, sticky material in the stool, and child has so much of frequency and severe pain in abdomen. So it may not dehydrate a child, but it leads to a lot of discomfort. And this is the real indication of giving antibiotics. The fourth common foodborne waterborne disease is typhoid. It starts with little fever. 2-3 days the fever becomes little more. Another 2-3 days the fever becomes high. So what you call step ladder, it keeps on rising every second, third day. By 1 week, you know the child is very sick, has got abdominal distension, loss of appetite, loss of weight, very high fever with shivering, and you know that the child probably has typhoid, and you do the blood test and you can make out that the child has got typhoid. So these are the four common food and waterborne disease that comes to my mind, and these are the ways they will present, which will help the parents to understand when they should seek the medical attention. But one point that you made very rightly, and I would reiterate, is that do not give antibiotic at the drop of a hat. If the child has 104 fever on day one, for sure it is not typhoid, for sure it is not something that needs antibiotic, for sure it is viral infection. So you can wait. So never give antibiotic without waiting for 2-3 days if the child is stable, and not before doing some basic blood test. And the only indication of giving antibiotic in a food and waterborne disease setup would be cholera, then typhoid, and bloody diarrhea, and that is visible blood, not stool showing some blood. These are the only three indications that comes to my mind where you need an antibiotic. Otherwise, all of them need just symptomatic treatment, and most important, hydration. Parents want to take medicine for diarrhea. They don't bother about how much the child is drinking. Is the child passing enough urine? And is the child having tears in the eye when he cries? Simple thing which they can follow to see whether the child is dehydrated. I think we need to tell our parents that breastfeed must be continued. Do not top milk in an older child and all the food item he is taking. And in addition, they should give at liberal how much fluid the child can drink, and that's the way to treat an acute watery diarrhea.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nitin. So my next question is to Dr. Manik Chatterjee. Please explain how immunization improves immunity of a child. What all vaccines are available for food and waterborne disease in India?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. So, as far as the second part of the question is concerned, I think speakers, including Dr. Gunjan and everyone else, they have actually very nicely elucidated what are the vaccines. So, we have the polio vaccines, both oral and the inactivated ones. We have cholera vaccines, hepatitis A vaccines, we have typhoid vaccine and rotavirus vaccine. And Dr. Gunjan has very clearly said that rotavirus vaccine is the one which is available under the universal immunization program, while and also the polio ones, while the other three vaccines for cholera, hepatitis A, typhoid, they are available in the private sector. Now, coming to the question of immunization and immunity, so a very simple way to understand that would be, I mean, all vaccines, they are actually those very same antigens or pathogens that actually produce the disease. But then what happens is, through some biochemical processes, through a period of time, the antigen or the pathogen in the vaccines are made to lose their disease producing potential. When that antigen or pathogen is introduced into a child's body, the child's body, through there are some specific cells like T cells, so lymphocytes, so they recognize that this is something which is foreign, this is something which can cause a problem, and then they automatically produce a defense against it. That defense inside our body are known as antibodies. So what happens is, in a vaccine, when the vaccine is introduced, so a vaccine is essentially nothing but the pathogen itself minus its disease producing capacity. So then the body recognizes, yes, there is a certain pathogen which has come in and I must create my defenses. So the defenses are created. Now subsequently, when an actual pathogen or an actual disease producing pathogen comes into our body through any infection, through contaminated hand, through food, through water, then the body recognizes, yes, I have already produced my defense against it, and then the body is capable of mounting a solid defense against that pathogen. So that is the underlying sort of the overall, the concept behind immunization and vaccination. So it is a very important public health tool. It's a very important and powerful preventive tool, and I just cannot stop reiterating the importance of getting your children vaccinated and immunized with all the vaccines that are currently available with us, because that one shot or two shots, depending on how many doses are required, that gives a very strong level of immunity against these disease causing organisms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. And just briefly, I just want to comment here that people think that if they're immunized, they'll never get that infection. But they need to understand one of the main purpose of vaccine is to ensure that you don't get the very severe manifestations of those infections. So you might still get some. But probably not the severe aspect, and it was very well shown with our COVID vaccination that we still had COVID outbreak, breakthrough infections. I think that word is actually wrong, but irrespective, the most important thing was it prevented the severe manifestation of that disease, and that's the reason we do all these vaccines timely. My next So we move to next round of our question. This is the last round. My first question is, and we've briefly talked about it, but just to make it very clear for the public, Dr. Santosh Gupta, can you just talk about where are these vaccines available, just briefly segregate them?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Manu. It's nice, actually going nice. Basically, some partial part has been already discussed by Dr. Gunjan and Dr. Man Chatterjee. Basically, these vaccine against the waterborne and foodborne disease, they are available in public sector and in private sectors. In public sector, under the UIP, basically our vaccines have an immunizations infrastructure have a cascade structure. That means we have a GMSD, Government Medical Store Department, at state level, at district level, at sub centers level, in between the community health centers, and also at the rural areas through the routine immunization sessions. We have a vaccines availability, and we have a that immunization sessions at each and every level at the government setup, basically. And these vaccines are being provided free of cost to the needy people. Even these vaccines are also provided sometimes to the local private practitioners at the delivery points. If we talk about the birth dose, hepatitis birth dose, government provides here, and to the private hospitals also to vaccinate the birth dose. They provides also the birth dose of the that OPV. They provide also for the BCG. And there, as Dr. Mehna Chatterjee also explained, actually our that country immunization program, they have that extreme steering body, that is an NTAG, National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization. They actually that analyze the disease burden, the morbidity and mortality, and which vaccines are most important at same point of time to introduce in the NIS, National Immunization Schedules. So, as briefly, these vaccines are available in both places. The vaccines available in the IAP schedule at the private pediatricians, and also available in the district hospital, community health center, primary health center, sub center at the lowest level, and below the lowest level we have a routine immunization sessions at each and every Anganwadi center areas and village. So these vaccines are being provided there free of cost. Yeah. Yes,
Thank you.
Dr. Manu.
The next question to you, Dr. Nitin Shah. Advice and recommendation to parents for children with special needs regarding avoiding contracting food and waterborne infections.
So I think, as I had said before, the general measures would remain the same even for these children. These children who are in special needs, they would be either having some physical or mental challenges, and they may have even poor hygiene. So they will be more dependent on their caretaker to help them with all the things, and that's the reason why these children should be even be more vigorously vaccinated, because we know, in spite of the best effort, the hygiene there may be some break in the hygiene chain, or the break in the way the children would look after themselves. So it's better that the children are vaccinated, which is a sure shot way of preventing. Like suppose you've taken, say, I give example of hepatitis A. You've taken, say, 1 dose of the live vaccine or 2 doses of the killed vaccine. It is 100% effective for your lifetime. So no matter then when you are exposed to a contaminated water or food, even if the virus is there in the food or water, it will you will get contracted with it, but you won't suffer from the disease. Same way now the new typhoid vaccine which we have, the conjugate typhoid vaccine, you give 1 dose and it gives you almost lifelong protection. You take 2 is even better. And again, then you have some contaminated food which is some typhoid germ, probably you will not suffer. So I think hand hygiene for the children will be very important, because they may not observe basic principles of hygiene, and vaccination, besides all other measures that I spoke for all normal children also.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. My next question is to Dr. Shubhangi. Advice and recommendation to parents for pre and post vaccination care, and advice for parents on managing fears of needles once they're coming to the hospital for vaccination.
Yeah, so first, I would like to, answer your second question, to minimize the fear of needles among the kids. So I want to tell you that I want to tell you all the vaccination start from the 0 to 5 years of the age of your kid, and there is a saying, it's always good to confront the truth better than, rather than like comforting with a lie. So it implies on everyone from a kid to a adult one. So whenever you are taking your kid for immunization or vaccine, like the vaccination, just start talking to him just 2 or 3 days before that we are going to take a particular vaccine. Just tell him about the vaccine, that this is good for your health. As you are eating banana or apple, it is good for your health. So same as the vaccine is good for your health. And yeah, it gonna pinch a lot. It gonna pain you a lot. Like, don't lie to them. Just, the mind makeup thing should be there. Like before the vaccination, the pre-vaccination thing is this. And the one more case study I want to share with you all. I think like there is a general neutrality should be there. Like I have seen at my field visit, during my field visit, like a father had come, with his kid for the vaccination, like for the vaccination at the vaccination site, and he was just comforting his kid and all. So it's not always necessary that mother should bring the kid or the grandmother should bring the kid to the vaccination site. आपका बच्चा जिसके साथ भी comfortable है, just like उनको आप लेकर जाइए वैक्सीनेशन साइट पे. समटाइम्स बच्चे अपने भाई बहनों के साथ खुश होते हैं, आप उनको साथ में लेकर जाइए. दिस इज द प्री वैक्सीनेशन थिंग. एज डॉक्टर तनेजा हैज आल्सो मेंशन्ड, वी हैव एनसीपी कार्ड. सो आपका मदर चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन कार्ड में सारा स्केड्यूल दिया होता है. आप उसमें पहले अपना सारा प्रिपरेशन कर लीजिए ड्यूरिंग द वैक्सीनेशन. ऑल्सो एट द वैक्सीनेशन साइट, जस्ट टॉक टू योर किड, मेक एन आई टू आई कॉन्टेक्ट विथ योर किड during the vaccination. Keep some toys or storybooks at the vaccination site also, just to talk to your kid. And after the post vaccination thing, there may be some rashes at the the vaccination site, at the, either on one hand or on the leg part in the calf region. And so you can put the eyes on that. And you can give a medication also according to the doctor. Like that medicine, this medicine should be non-aspirin antibiotic drug. And yeah, this is all. And for the for the infants, you can give the sponge bath also to the kid. So yeah, this is all right.
So rightly said.
Can I
Very,
comments?
please add, Dr.
Yeah. So
Please.
other three important ways you can reduce pain is in a small baby, breastfeeding before giving vaccine. Number two, for baby less than 2 years, especially less than 1 year, giving them a 25% sucrose just before vaccination. That sweetness itself helps to reduce the pain. And last but not the least is give the vaccine to a child, small baby, in the mother's or the father's lap or in their hands, because that gives a lot of comfort. And distraction, as the speaker also said, distract the child while vaccinating, and promise him some good toffee or something if he doesn't move, cry, etc. So tell a story, ask him to repeat a story, rhyme, and inject that time. The pain becomes less. These are the ways by which international agencies also approve the ways to reduce pain while you are giving the vaccine.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding to that. And it's so true. And, they can carry their favorite toys, which comfort them. And then always tell the truth, as you said, Dr. Shubhangi, very, very important. Tell them why they're getting vaccinated. Maybe you can give any positive reinforcement after they've gone through the process. So to make them feel like they, you are proud as a parent that they underwent through that pain. So please look into those measures. So my one of the last questions is to Dr. Gunjan Taneja. What support can the government provide for immunization against food and waterborne diseases for young children?
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Manu. I think the government remains the most important stakeholder and the most important facilitator in taking forward the immunization agenda. Now, we were having this discussion on the vaccines available in the public sector and the private sector. Let me be very clear and upfront. All vaccines which are available in the country, be it through the public sector and the additional ones through the private sector, are safe, efficacious, effective, and the government has also a role there through the regulatory mechanisms which are set up in the country. So why is typhoid, hepatitis A vaccines available in the country? Because the government has approved it. Now, the introduction of a vaccine in the public healthcare system has a lot of dynamics. You need to look at first the vaccine safety, as I said, efficacy, effectiveness. You need to look at the dosing. Do we have the requisite amount of vaccines available, be it India or other countries, to ensure that there is uninterrupted supply? What are the costs? How is our surveillance going on? So there are a number of factors which we need to consider. So the government looks at the private sector in ensuring that certain important vaccines which are still to be introduced in the country can be provided to the people who want them and are available through the private sector. So that's the role of the facilitator. As far as the stakeholder is concerned, we all know that the national government and the state governments provide free vaccinations to people, to almost the entire cohort of people. There are two vaccines now in the pipeline, which there are discussions happening. One is TCV, which possibly there are implementation projects undertaken in Navi Mumbai which have generated the evidence. This vaccine has been recently introduced in immunization programs in Pakistan, and Nepal will be starting it beginning next month of this year. So the government also is possibly in discussions in how to take this forward. The other remains oral cholera vaccine. Again, evidence has been generated. However, there are additional factors which need to be considered, both programmatic and operational. And both these vaccines are high on the anvil of the World Health Organization and Gavi. So I'll just summarize by saying that the government is playing its part, both in ensuring that vaccines which need to be provided, which have the maximum impact on preventing childhood mortality and morbidity, for example, amongst all diarrheal diseases, rotavirus, and going forward, possibly TCV and other vaccines are insured or are provided to the public, and then a certain set of vaccines which for some reason or other cannot be a part of the universal immunization program are available to the public through the private sector. And of course, the overarching recommendation is that if you can afford, you need to take all available vaccines which both the systems provide in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunjan. And by TCV, Dr. Gunjan meant typhoid vaccine. So it's a typhoid conjugate vaccine, which short term will use TCV. So my last question is to Dr. Manik Chatterjee. What more is required at the end of health authorities in India to eliminate unwanted food and waterborne infections such as typhoid and hepatitis A?
Sure. And the first thing I would mention is the point that Dr. Gunjan made, that the government does the regulatory job and undertakes a public health evidence-based introduction of these vaccines. So that is point number one. But coming to a few other points which also the government is involved in, and which are also important for disease prevention. So if you remember my first example, so point of source of drinking water, so monitoring of water samples, that is something which is done. Testing of water sources, what is the condition, so these are referred to as public health engineering components of control of disease. So monitoring and testing of water samples, what is the condition of the pipes through which water flows into your house, so testing of that, replacing that. So as you can understand that prevention of these waterborne diseases and foodborne diseases, they are not only limited to the health department, they have a very wide dimension of prevention of control. Even monitoring of food safety inspectors, public health officers, so are the foods covered where they are displayed, are the proper handling practices, covering of hands, washing of hands, are they taking place of not or not? These are also parts of preventing, foodborne and waterborne infection. Garbage and sewage disposal in and around your houses, in and around your localities, they are an important function which contributes to prevention of foodborne and waterborne diseases, because as you are well aware, these are heavily contaminated material and they should not be lying around. Health education itself is a very powerful tool which is used and should be used more for prevention of food and waterborne infections. Apart from that, the concept of personal protection and hygiene, the first points that I was talking about, and the most important point, hand washing and personal hygiene, that should be mentioned, and that responsibility lies with us, the parents and our children. So as you can see, it's a multi-dimensional approach which is undertaken by the government authorities and is a mix of rights and responsibilities. You are supposed to receive some rights in terms of a clean environment, and you are supposed to undertake some responsibilities, that is take care of your personal hygiene and your child's personal hygiene, so that they are less exposed to these food and waterborne infections. So that is the overall policy, administration and implementation ambit under which control of food and waterborne infections is done. That's a very summarized view of it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of our session today. I would request all my speakers to give one-liners to conclude the session. I'll start with Dr. Nitin Shah.
So I would say that clean and if possible boil potable water, clean cooked food, personal hand hygiene, breastfeeding and immunization are the 5 cornerstones for healthy life for children.
Thank you. Dr. Santosh Gupta.
Yes, for one-liner, basically to all the beneficiaries, healthy diet, hand hygiene, and follow all the vaccination schedules to your child, because child is the economic pillar of the India and any country. So follow with this. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Gunjan Taneja.
So we are all familiar with the term Microsoft PPT or PowerPoint, which we refer to as PPT. So I'll use that analogy. So we need to protect through vaccination. We need to prevent the disease through appropriate hand hygiene and other practices. And then if we do suffer, then timely treatment. So these, for me, it's just another way of saying what Dr. Shah and Dr. Santosh referred to: protect, prevent, and treat. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shubhangi.
From my side, there is a message for parents. Kindly, focus on the communication whenever you are talking to your kids. Eat this, eat that. You have to do this, do that. Kind of like talk about the reason also. So, like it's gonna be a lifelong learning lesson for them. Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Manik Chatterjee.
Thanks. So basically, just three messages from my end. Be informed for parents. Be informed what could be the sources and how to control the sources of infection. Make sure your child washes their hands regularly with soap and water. Get your child vaccinated with whatever vaccines are available in the country. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So we thank you so much. It was very, very interesting session, and all the comments were so reasonable and scientific. I hope my audience enjoyed it. In the end, I'll just say vaccines have been and will be the backbone of preventing all these infectious diseases, and COVID pandemic was a huge example. I hope it will put rest to all the misinformation, circling around our vaccine, and we were able to add to that scientific knowledge with our discussion today. And as the theme of this World Immunization Week is long life for all, we all echo the same. So thank you so much everyone for joining us for the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.